Hi, it's Bobbie from Fifth Avenue Cake Designs, and if you were with me a few days ago, you saw that I did a hand-painted cherry blossom cake with cherry blossoms made of flower paste on there. Some of the cherry blossoms were individually petaled, such as these. They all had buds going through them, and some were just these, which is done with a single 5-petal cutter. So I am going to show you how to do the cherry blossoms because I promised you that I would. Okay, so we're back, and this is the single blossom. And when I say single, I mean it's done with one cutter that has 5 petals on it and some stamens. I went ahead and put the different blossoms onto an 18 gauge wire just so it would look prettier. But I'm going to show you how I did this particular one, which I call a single cherry blossom because they're not individual petals. So let me show you how I did this. So what you want to begin with is you want to make yourself a stamen. And you want to grab a bunch of stamens. They usually come double-seeded. These actually were purple, and I went ahead with some plum sugar flare petal dust and dusted them this dark pink color because cherry blossoms stamens are dark and they come up above the petals, which was something that surprised me actually. But what you want to do is make a loop onto your wire, put your stamens through the loop so that they're in a V shape, and then go ahead and tape them down the wire so that the wire's right here and the tape is starting right here, and your blossom is going to come to right here, but I'll show you that as we do it. So you want to start with one of these, and I use for this a 26 gauge wire and 1/4 inch white floral tape. So what we need for this project is we're going to do a Mexican hat, and you can do it one of two ways. You can either use just a plain foam Mexican hat by Cell Sticks, or you can use the Cell Stick groove board. I actually like using both, and I'm going to show you why. I can get a thinner, or I can achieve a thinner blossom by doing it with this board, cutting it on my cutter, and then vining it on my cell pad. And I'll explain why in a minute. So we're going to take a little bit of gum paste, and you don't need a lot for the individual blossoms. Now I do not have a cherry blossom cutter, so I am using Orchard Products Primrose cutter, which ended up working out perfectly. I actually do not like to buy a zillion cutters when I can use cutters that I already have in my stash, in my stock. So that's what I did for this. So we're going to condition the gum paste, which I'm doing right now with a little bit of Trex, or you can use Crisco or some sort of vegetable fat. And then I'm just going to kind of roll it into a ball that I smash. And this hole right here, you're going to see 3 holes on your groove board, is where I'm going to just push this down. I'm going to grab a medium cell stick, and I'm just going to bring it out super thin. Now I could do this on the cell stick foam pad, and it would be fine. What I found when I did that was because this is hard, so I couldn't get as much tension. I wasn't able to achieve that with the foam pad. I was not impressed with the petals that I made. So we're going to remove this, and because it's so thin, I'm going to go in with a little palette knife. And as you can see, I have like a little dimple. I want my dimple to face up. And I'm going to come in with my cutter. I'm not too concerned that this is rolled in such an odd design because I'm just going to cut out my cherry blossom. I'm rubbing it against my workspace so that when I cut it away, I don't have those weird hairs that sometimes you can get when you are using gum paste and you go to cut. Now, because of this type of cutter, I do have to poke a little bit to get it out, and it came out nicely. This is where you will need the foam pad. Now, if you only have a foam pad, don't sweat it, just use it, it'll be fine. You're going to want to stick it in, and I went ahead and did that really fast. You want to stick it in the medium hole on the soft side. Just do a little bit of pushing in, not too much. And right now we're just going to soften out these petals. And I'm going to give them a little bit more of a open look because the cherry blossom has more of an open, I don't want to say a heart look, but it has a little indentation at the top there. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to take our Dresden tool and we're going to go ahead and use the Dresden tool to vein the cherry blossom all the way around. So that is a 5-petal blossom, and because the blossom has almost like 2 petals per, is what I like to say, you want to make sure to get both sides. So once you're happy with what you achieve, just give it a little bit more of a push. Gently pop it out onto your hand. It should come out pretty easily. And then what I like to do, because we are going to be going up quite a bit of that thick tape there. And if you look at a cherry blossom, the center is pretty, the stamens in there are pretty thick. So I'm going to make a little hole. I want to be very careful that because I have the side is pointy, that I do not go through my bottom. And then I'm going to take a little bit of egg white. I have found egg white is probably the best glue that you can use. And I'm going to stick it straight into the hole. I'm going to try not to get it around the sides because I'm going to be petal dusting that with that dark plum and then coming up with a baby pink. So you're going to take your cherry blossom up through a little bit through the tape. If this is a little bit too low, you do want those stamens to be higher. And it does take a little bit of finesse to get it through there without ripping it. So we're going to go ahead and do that and get it up there. Now remember, this bottom part is going to be the hip and part of the calyx of your cherry blossom. It's all in one for this one. There we go. So you don't want to rip it. Once you get to this point, the best thing to do is to take a little bit of cornstarch onto your hand and just kind of mold it around your tape stamens. Now remember that you are going to be bringing brown tape around your blossoms because cherry blossoms are on a brown branch that you could probably put in, or you can put in, a little bit of your dark plum petal dust and some apple green to give it a more realistic look. But you want to get this to really become attached. Just kind of mold it around until it is there. Once it's there, you want to fold in your petals and just make them have movement so that they lay however you want. Remember, you don't want them all laying the same way. I seem to have dried out my bottom more than I wanted to, so I'm going to grab a little bit of my Trex and recondition that gum paste just a little bit to get it to adhere a little better. So depending on whether your gum paste is dry or wet will decide upon whether or not you want to use cornstarch or vegetable fat. So once you have it attached and you're happy, you're going to want to put it upside down so that it can dry nicely upside down. So what I usually do is hang it down on a drying rack, or you can use the handle to your cabinet. So let's go and dust it. Alright, so I'm taking a little bit of my Plum Petal Dust by Sugar Flare, and I am going to color the rose hip, which is right here. That part of your cherry blossom is fairly dark, and of course we want to keep it as realistic as possible. So I'm going to color it as dark as I believe it needs to be. For a touch of realism, if you want, you can take a little bit of a green and just add it in there, because there is a little bit of green. Not a lot. It mostly has that dark pink color. The other part that you need to remember in a cherry blossom is it's extremely dark right in here. It's actually the stamens and where they sit, but we're just going to give it an illusion that the stamens are going down. So you just kind of want to pounce that in. You don't want to hurt your gum paste flowers. And then for the rest of the cherry blossom, you're just going to bring in, and what I did was mixed a fairy pink with a baby pink, or in this case Cosmo pink, and I felt the Cosmo pink was a little bit darker than I wanted for the cherry blossoms, so I brought in a little fairy pink, which also added a little bit of sparkles. But if you wanted to keep it without the sparkles and just add your baby pink, you could mix it with a little bit of elderwise or some cornstarch, something to lighten it up. I usually like to mix it, or a white. I like the elderwise because it doesn't get overly white and it doesn't take out too much color. But whatever you have that's of a white nature will be fine. Don't forget to get the back of your petals, and you always want to start from your petal and go down. Like so. So that you're not getting too much color in that center area. And I do like to color my petals while they're still somewhat wet. This happens to be a little bit more wet than I would normally color a petal, but the one that I had already prepared for you had a little accident, so we're just going to make do with what we have. It'll still come out beautiful. I just have to be extremely careful with where those petals go. So that's it. That's all you have to do. Once this is completely dry and ready, you can go ahead and add on 3 or 4 more of them. They grow in bunches. I would probably do up to 5, and bring them in with your brown floral tape, as you saw in the beginning. Thank you for joining me. If you want to learn more about doing the individual petals, I have a downloadable video at FifthAvenueCakeDesigns.com. So here you have your cut cherry blossom with your one cutter to make your cherry blossom, and this would be a filler flower if you were doing, I don't know, a cake that you wanted to have just little filler flowers around, or you just wanted some to go against the cake, or to do something with royal icing. And then here you have your individually petaled cherry blossom, where you could use it as your focal flower, which I did for the hand-painted cake, or you could use as an accent flower, but it's not so much a filler flower anymore because it's been brought out to be bigger. So it's pretty much up to you what you want to do. Before you do add it to your cake, you will want to steam in that color so that when you put it on your cake, you don't have dust falling onto your beautiful white or off-white cake or even a pink cake. You don't want pieces of dust getting in there. It was a pleasure to do this tutorial for you. Cherry blossoms are special and dear to my heart, so I'm glad I had a chance to share them with you. Hi, it's Bobbie from Fifth Avenue Cake Designs, and today we're going to paint cherry blossoms on a cherry blossom cake. With it being cherry blossom season and all, I thought it would be fun. So let's begin. So we're going to go in, we're going to make our little line. And at the moment I'm not worried if I haven't connected completely because I said we're going to go back. And cherry blossoms have a thick bark. It's on a tree. And the branches are pretty thick as well. Alright, so we have a light little guide. A little bit nuts over here with the guide, so let's take this off a little bit. And you can get this off fairly easily because I watered it down. I'm just going to come in. So I'm going to come with a cleaner brush, one that doesn't have any brown on it, and just take that off. There we go. All right. Now we're going to paint in our cherry blossoms. And what you need to do that, I have a little bit of piping gel right here. And it came in a tube, so it's easy to use. And I'm using that as a medium, like you would for acrylic paint. And then I'm taking a little bit, or a lot of it, of electric pink. It came out a little bit more than I wanted. And just some really bright white. And I'm going to dip the toe. This is the toe of my brush, and this is the heel. I'm working with a 1/4 inch shader. I'm going to dip my toe in to my white and really load up that toe. And I'm not too worried that it's getting on my heel because cherry blossoms are fairly light. So I'm going to put the pink on my heel. So now we're loaded up. And then I'm going to go into my piping gel as my medium. I'm going to swipe. You can see I don't have enough white on one side. Both sides need to have the color, so that when you swipe, you have two colors showing. A lot of times white is the harder color to keep on the brush. So we'll start down here by making our first cherry blossom right on the base. And I'm going to start on my chisel. I'm going to sweep 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to scrub or wiggle, whichever you prefer as far as verbiage. I don't think I have enough white. I want a little bit more contrast there, so I'm going to go back and get some more white. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. Now you want to always start on your chisel, and you want to always go back and forth, laying on your brush, coming up on your chisel, and coming over. You can put in the other side first, or you can go down and do your legs. Think of it as a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs. Come up on your chisel, and if you bring that in, you'll get a nice little curve to your petal. And that's in any type of a blossom that you do. Use your turntable so that you're not having to fight with your hands. Now later on when that dries, I'm going to go back over that because some of the brown got in there and I don't really like that look. Okay, now we're going to go over here and maybe put one right here. And we're going to do the same thing. Scrub, scrub, scrub. I'm going to start on your chisel. Come flat down, come back up on your chisel once you get that scrubbing motion going. Come over to the other side. Now, depending on your dominant hand, Your left side, for me, it's going to be harder. If you're left-handed, the right side might be a little bit harder because it's an unusual position and you're mirroring what you're doing. But the more you practice, the easier that will become. And you'll probably want to use something so that you can turn back and forth. So there we go. And we'll put maybe a little bud over here. To do a cherry blossom bud, the buds are pretty tight, but they almost, I want to say they kind of feather. So the way that I do is I put in a petal that's fairly narrow, and then I go up just a little bit higher, put in another petal, and then I come back down to where I was, and I put in the third petal, so I can make my bud. And when that dries, I'll go in and add some calyxes over there. Alright, so you want to imagine that you have a branch coming off of your base guide. So your imaginary branch is coming right here, and we will later on put those in. So if we have imaginary branch, we'd have one right about here. So I'm going to put another bud there, and we will connect these all when the paint dries a little bit so that we don't have a gigantic mess of color. So we're putting in our 3 portions, coming up on our chisel to make a nice little curve. And if you want, if there's a portion that you didn't think had enough movement, you can go in with the tippy toe of your brush and just add that right in. Alright, so as we move up the cake, or actually we're not quite getting to the cake yet, we're going to have another imaginary branch coming right here. So I'm going to put another one here on the base of my cake so that everything flows in. And every once in a while, just grab a little bit of your piping gel. It will help your paint glide a little bit better. So we're going to put our next one, our flower right here, because we already have 2 buds going up on the other side. So let's say this is the head, and I'm going to show you some little tricks for this. So you're going to go in 1, 2, 3, scrub, 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 scrub. Make that petal look like it's going backwards. Then I did lift up because I want to come in like that. So rather than just keep going, I'm going to lift up my brush and bring it in. Kind of like a cheating way, but it works really well. And then right here, you have to figure out you probably want your next petal, so that would be like your arms. The more you can get your brush to scrub, and as you scrub, if you come up onto your chisel and back down, it will actually give you more movement. So we have 2 petals on. I like to put in both of my side petals. A lot of people will work around the petals. I like to just go ahead and get these in. So I'm going to scrub on this side the same way. And because it is my left side and I cannot see over my hand, I'm going to stop, come up on my chisel, and bring it down, rather than make it one full movement. And this technique is a one-stroke method. There are quite a few people who do it. Marjorie Clark does it, and she makes some beautiful Limoges roses. Donna Dewberry has taught several classes, and she does her own neat little thing. Alright, so you can always go in, I don't know if you can see, with your white. And remember, we're going to have some stamens in there, so I'm not that concerned. So we finished the cake. I've put on some individually petaled gum paste cherry blossoms, and then I've done 5-petal, the 1-cutter 5-petal cherry blossom to go with my painted cherry blossom cake, just to add an extra little oomph. And I will be teaching how to do the gum paste cherry blossoms on another day, but I thank you for joining me.